Elias's eyes locked on his phone, and I watched the blood drain from his face. $1. That's what the screen showed. His prized vintage sports car, the one he babied more than our relationship, the one he polished like a trophy every Sunday, had just sold at auction for a single, pitiful $1. And I was the one who made it happen. We were in court. He'd dragged me there to bleed me dry over some pathetic emotional damages claim. For weeks, he'd sat across from me in tailored suits, smirking like he'd already won. Today was supposed to be his victory lap. Instead, he was watching his most precious possession slip through his fingers in real time, powerless to stop it. His jaw tightened. His knuckles whitened. Then he looked at me. I didn't flinch. I didn't look away. I let the smallest smile curl at the edge of my mouth. That's when he exploded, shouting about theft and my car. Sealing his fate in front of the judge. And in that moment, I knew my revenge had landed exactly where it needed to. But let me start from the beginning. I met Elias in a shared co-working space on a rainy Tuesday. He was pitching his revolutionary AI startup to anyone who would listen, gesturing wildly at his laptop screen. I watched from my corner desk, coding quietly while he talked about changing the world. When his audience walked away looking confused, I approached him. "Your idea has potential," I said, "but your algorithm is flawed." He looked at me like I'd slapped him. Then I showed him my screen, the same concept, but actually working. His eyes lit up with something I mistook for admiration. "We should be partners," he said, flashing that charming smile that would later destroy me. "You build the tech, I'll handle everything else." Within a week, we'd moved our operations to a tiny OFCE above a co-FFEE shop. Within 2 weeks, we were sleeping together. Elias had this way of making everything feel urgent and exciting, like we were racing against time to build something incredible. "Equal partners in everything," he whispered one night as we worked until dawn. I believed him completely. That was my first mistake. Those early months were pure magic. We lived on ramen noodles and dreams, coding until our eyes burned and talking about our IPO over midnight dinners. Elias would sketch out our future on napkins, the company going public, buying matching Teslas, maybe even a house together. "We're going to be the next big thing," he'd say, wrapping his arms around me as I debugged our latest prototype. "You and me against the world." I handled all the technical development while he worked on business strategy and investor relations. It felt perfect. We complemented each other's skills. I was the brains behind the operation, and he was the face that could sell ice to penguins. Our AI tool was getting real traction. Companies were actually paying for our beta version. The revenue was small but growing steadily. Every milestone felt like validation that we were building something special together. Late one night, as I pushed our latest update live, Elias brought me co-FFEE and kissed the top of my head. "I couldn't do this without you," he said. I leaned into him, feeling like the luckiest person alive. We were partners in every sense of the word. The first crack appeared at TechCrunch Disrupt. Elias was presenting our company to a room full of investors and journalists. I watched from the audience, proud and excited to see our work in the spotlight. "My company has developed groundbreaking AI technology," he began. My stomach dropped. "My company?" I waited for him to mention me, to introduce his co-founder. Instead, he talked about my vision and my innovation for 20 straight minutes. After his presentation, investors swarmed him with questions. I pushed through the crowd, expecting him to introduce me as his technical co-founder. Instead, he said, "This is my developer. She handles the coding side of things." Developer. Not co-founder. Not partner. Just another employee. When I confronted him later, he laughed at OFF. "You're being too sensitive," he said, not even looking up from his phone. "You know how important you are to me. Does it really matter what I call you on stage?" It mattered. It mattered more than he could understand. But I swallowed my anger and told myself he was just nervous. First-time founder mistakes. It wouldn't happen again. I was wrong. I found the amended contracts by accident. I was looking for our original partnership agreement to update our insurance, and I stumbled across a folder labeled Legal Updates on Elias's laptop. My equity stake had been reduced from 50% to 35%. Then to 25%. The most recent version showed 15%. I stared at the screen, my hands shaking. These weren't drafts or hypotheticals. They were signed documents, dated over the past 6 months. My signature was forged on every single one. "Elias," I called out, my voice surprisingly steady. "Can you come here for a minute?" He walked over casually, coffee in hand. When he saw what was on the screen, his face went pale. "Look, I can explain," he started. "These are just legal adjustments our lawyer recommended. Something about liability and you forged my signature. I was going to talk to you about it. Things have been so busy, and I didn't want to stress you out with legal stuff. You're better with the technical side anyway." The way he said it. Like I was too simple to understand business decisions about my own company. Like I should be grateful he was handling the complicated stuff. "Fix this," I said quietly. "Today." He promised he would. Another lie. The investor meeting with Victor was supposed to be our big break. A chance to secure series of funding that would take us to the next level. I prepared for weeks, building detailed technical demonstrations and financial projections. But when Victor arrived, something felt off. He barely looked at me during introductions, focusing entirely on Elias. When I tried to explain our technical advantages, Victor interrupted. "I'm concerned about the emotional stability of your team," he said, looking directly at me. "I've heard there have been some commitment issues." I stared at him in shock. "I'm sorry, what?" The outbursts, the erratic behavior. It's concerning for potential investors. We need to know our founding team is solid. I'd never had an outburst in my life. I'd never shown anything but complete dedication to our company. Where was this coming from? Elias jumped in smoothly. "Victor, I think there might be some misunderstanding. We're all committed to making this work." But I caught the look that passed between them. The slight nod. The understanding. After Victor left without committing to funding, I cornered Elias in our OFCE. "What did you tell him about me?" "Nothing," he said, but he wouldn't meet my eyes. That's when I knew. The whispers, the doubts, the character assassination, it was all coming from inside the house. The coup happened on a Wednesday morning in our conference room. I walked in expecting our usual team meeting with Mara, our operations lead, and instead found a room full of strangers in expensive suits. "Everyone, I want you to meet our new board members," Elias announced, like this was planned. Like I knew about it. One of them, a sharp-faced woman in her 50s, looked at me with thinly veiled disdain. "And you must be the technical consultant we've heard about." "Co-founder," I corrected. Elias cleared his throat. "Actually, we've made some organizational changes. For the health of the company and everyone involved, we've decided you should step back from day-to-day operations." The room went silent. I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. Step back. This is my company. Our company. Was your company, the sharp-faced woman said. According to our legal review, your equity position is minimal. And given the concerns about your stability, what concerns? I stood up, my voice rising. I built this entire platform from scratch. See? Elias said to the room, his voice full of fake concern. This is exactly what we're talking about. I was set up. Perfectly, completely set up. The envelope arrived 3 days later, delivered by a courier who made me sign for it. Inside was a lawsuit filed by Elias Chen versus my name, claiming emotional damages and defamation. He was suing me for $500,000. The complaint painted me as an unstable ex-girlfriend who'd threatened to destroy his business reputation. It described meltdowns I'd never had and threats I'd never made. According to his version of events, I was a scorned woman trying to take down his successful company. The irony was burning. He'd stolen my company, destroyed my reputation, and now he was suing me for the emotional damage he'd caused himself. I called 3 lawyers that day. The first 2 took one look at the case and quoted fees I couldn't afford. The third one was more honest. With your equity stake this low and his documentation this thorough, you're looking at an uphill battle. Even if you win, it'll cost more than you could ever recover. That night, I sat in our shared apartment, which would soon be just his apartment, and read through the lawsuit again. Every line was calculated to humiliate me, to make me seem like a crazy ex-girlfriend instead of a wronged business partner. He'd thought of everything. Except one thing. I moved out that weekend, taking only my clothes and my laptop. Everything else, the furniture we'd bought together, the co-FFEE machine I'd loved, even the stupid houseplant I'd kept alive for 2 years, I left behind. My new place was a bare loft in a converted warehouse across town. No fancy coffee machine, no comfortable couch, just concrete floors and high windows that let in harsh morning light. It felt like a monk's cell, which was perfect. I wasn't planning to get comfortable. The startup world moved on without me. I watched from the outside as Elias gave interviews about his innovative AI company, fielding questions about the future of machine learning like he'd invented the concept himself. Every article felt like a knife twist. But I wasn't gone. I was just getting started. While he was busy playing CEO, I was doing what I did best, building. Not a company this time. Not a product. I was building a weapon, piece by piece, line by code by line. The lawsuit would take months to resolve. Plenty of time to plan. Plenty of time to think. And plenty of time to remember exactly what Elias cared about more than anything else in the world. That stupid car. I started coding again at 2 a.m., fueled by anger and cheap coffee. Not for any company or client, but for myself. A new AI tool that would make our old platform look like a toy. Every night, I worked on something Elias could never touch, never claim, never steal. It was mine completely, built from scratch in my empty loft while he slept peacefully in our old bed. The technical challenges were harder without a team, but I didn't care. I had time and motivation in unlimited supply. Each function I wrote, each algorithm I perfected, felt like taking back a piece of myself he'd stolen. I wasn't building it to get rich. Money wasn't the point anymore. I was building it to prove something, to myself, to him, to everyone who'd written me OFF as just another bitter ex-girlfriend. The code was elegant and efficient in ways our old platform never was. Without Elias rushing me toward deadlines and investor demos, I could build something truly beautiful. Something that worked exactly as intended. By dawn, I'd have new features running. By the time Elias was drinking his morning coffee and checking tech blogs for mentions of his company, I was already 3 steps ahead of anything he could imagine. He thought he'd won. He had no idea the game was just beginning. Mara reached out on an encrypted messaging app 6 weeks after I'd been pushed out. She was the only one from our old team who'd seen through Elias's charm from the beginning. Quiet, sharp, and fiercely loyal to people who earned it. Can we meet? Her message read. Coffee. Somewhere he won't see us. We met at a small cafe across town. She looked tired, stressed in a way I'd never seen before. She ordered her co-FFEE black and got straight to the point. He's imploding without you, she said quietly. The platform is full of bugs he can't fix. The new features you were working on? Dead in the water. He's been hiring freelancers to try to reverse engineer your code, but nobody can figure out how you built it. I felt a small surge of satisfaction. Good. It gets worse, she continued. The investors are asking questions. Victor pulled out last week. Said the technical foundation wasn't as solid as he'd been led to believe. Mara slid a flash drive across the table. Financial reports, investor emails, board meeting notes. Everything. I made copies before they changed the passwords. I stared at the drive. Why are you helping me? Because you got screwed, she said simply. And because I know who really built that company. When she left, I sat alone with my coffee and the flash drive, feeling something I hadn't felt in weeks, hope. The flash drive was a goldmine of information, but one detail caught my attention more than anything else, Elias's car. A 1967 Shelby Mustang GT500, meticulously restored over 3 years, worth nearly $200,000. According to the insurance documents, It was his most valuable possession. According to his social media posts, it was the only thing in life that always behaves perfectly. More importantly, according to the registration documents I found buried in the files, it was still titled in both our names. When we'd first started dating, Elias had insisted on adding me to the title for insurance purposes. I'd barely paid attention at the time, just another piece of paperwork in the chaos of starting a company and a relationship simultaneously. But now, that forgotten signature was the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen. Legally, I owned half that car. And in a joint ownership situation, either party could authorize its sale. I spent the next 3 hours researching vehicle ownership laws, auction houses, and title transfer procedures. By the time the sun set, I had a plan forming. Not just for revenge, for perfect, poetic justice. That car was his pride and joy, his escape from stress, his symbol of success. He'd spent countless hours polishing it, tuning it, showing it off at car shows. Soon, it would be mine to give away. I started watching from a distance, tracking Elias's routines and his company's decline. His social media painted a picture of confidence and success, but Mara's inside information told a different story. The platform was hemorrhaging users due to technical problems he couldn't fix. 2 major clients had cancelled their contracts after experiencing system failures. The board was asking uncomfortable questions about the technical team's capabilities. His personal posts were revealing too. Photos of him with the Mustang at weekend car shows, captions about how it was the one constant in a chaotic world. He'd take it for drives when he was stressed, posting sunset photos from scenic overlooks. The car wasn't just a possession to him. It was therapy, identity, and status symbol all rolled into one. Meanwhile, my own project was taking shape beautifully. The AI tool I'd been building was not only functional but superior to anything we'd created together. I'd started reaching out to potential clients quietly, getting interest from companies that had never heard of Elias or his failing startup. But I wasn't ready to launch yet. First, I had other business to attend to. Business that involved a certain blue Mustang and a very specific type of auction house. I played the part of the defeated ex-girlfriend perfectly. When his lawyers reached out to discuss settlement terms, I was conciliatory and eager to resolve things quickly. I just want this to be over, I told them during our video call, making my voice sound tired and defeated. I don't want to fight anymore. Elias looked pleased when his lawyer relayed my apparent willingness to settle. According to Mara, he'd started telling people I was finally seeing reason and would probably just take whatever we offer her. I let him think that. I agreed to mediation sessions where I played the role of someone who'd been beaten down by the legal process. I made small concessions, asked for modest settlements, acted like someone who just wanted to move on with her life. All the while, I was researching auction houses, title transfer laws, and very specific timing requirements. The lawsuit was scheduled for a final hearing in 6 weeks. By then, discovery would be complete, evidence would be submitted, and both sides would present their cases to the judge. It was also exactly when I planned to teach Elias the most expensive lesson of his life. The timing had to be perfect. 1 moment too early, and he could stop it. 1 moment too late, and it wouldn't have maximum impact. But if I timed it just right. Finding the right auction house took 3 weeks of careful research. I needed somewhere legitimate but specialized, somewhere that would take the car and ask minimal questions about the circumstances. Marcus ran a small auction house that specialized in classic cars and estate sales. He was professional, discreet, and completely uninterested in the personal drama behind why someone might want to sell a valuable classic car quickly. "It's a clean title?" he asked, examining the paperwork. "Completely clean. Both names on the registration, which means either owner can authorize the sale." He nodded, making notes. "Beautiful car. Should get good interest. What kind of reserve are you thinking?" "No reserve," I said. "I want it to sell regardless of price." He looked surprised. "No reserve on a car like this? You could be leaving money on the table." "I'm not doing this for the money." Something in my tone made him look at me more carefully, but he didn't ask follow-up questions. In his business, He'd probably seen plenty of divorce sales and bitter ex-partners. When do you want to schedule it? I gave him the exact date, a Tuesday morning, right in the middle of Elias's final court hearing. And I'll need you to livestream it online. Full documentation of the sale. That's unusual, but we can arrange it. Perfect. The title transfer paperwork was surprisingly simple. As a joint owner, I had every legal right to authorize the sale of the vehicle. I just had to fill out the correct forms, get them notarized, and file them with the auction house. I did everything by the book. Legal, clean, utterly untouchable. The car would be picked up from the parking garage of Elias's apartment building on Monday evening, the day before our final court hearing. By the time he noticed it was missing, it would already be at the auction house, scheduled for sale in less than 12 hours. I made copies of every document, every form, every piece of paperwork. If he tried to claim theft or fraud, I had a paper trail that would make any lawyer weep with joy. The beauty of it was the timing. Once the auction started, there would be no way to stop it. No court injunction could halt a legal sale in progress. No amount of screaming or threatening would change the fact that I had every right to sell my half of the car. And since it was joint ownership, selling my half meant selling the whole car. I signed the final form with a steady hand, thinking about all the times he'd dismissed me as just the technical person or the developer. Soon, he'd learn exactly how technical I could be when it came to revenge. I scheduled the auction for 10 a.m. on Tuesday, exactly when our court hearing was scheduled to begin. Elias would be sitting in that courtroom, confident and smug, probably checking his phone between testimony. That's when the notifications would start coming in. I made sure his phone number was on file with the auction house as an interested party notification. He'd get text updates as the bidding progressed. Real-time alerts about every bid on his most prized possession. The beautiful irony was that he'd demanded this final hearing. His lawyers had pushed for it, confident they could get a quick judgment and maximum damages. He wanted his day in court, his chance to publicly humiliate me one last time. Instead, he was going to watch his $200,000 car get sold while he sat powerless in a courtroom, unable to leave without damaging his own case. I spent Monday evening triple-checking every detail. The tow truck was scheduled for 7 p.m., right when Elias would be at his weekly dinner with investors. The car would be at the auction house by 8 p.m., catalogued and ready for sale. By the time he noticed it was missing, the auction would be less than 14 hours away. Too late to stop. Too late to save. Just late enough to panic. I composed the email carefully, making sure the tone was perfectly innocent. Hi Elias, I hope you're well. I wanted to let you know that I'll be selling my share of the Mustang tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. through Marcus Classic Auto Auctions. Since we're joint owners, I thought you should know. You can watch the sale online at their website if you're interested. I know how much that car means to you, so I wanted to give you a heads up. Best regards, my name. I scheduled it to send at 9:45 a.m., 15 minutes before the auction began and 5 minutes after our court hearing started. Just enough time for him to see it, understand what was happening, and realize he was completely powerless to stop it. The night before the hearing, I barely slept. Not from nervousness, I felt calmer than I had in months. Everything was in place. Every detail was planned. Every possible contingency was covered. Elias had taught me a lot about business strategy over the past year. About timing, leverage, and the importance of controlling the narrative. Tomorrow, I was going to be an excellent student. I set 3 alarms for 6 a.m., though I was already awake when the first one went off. Today was the day Elias learned that quiet technical people could be far more dangerous than loud, charismatic ones. The courthouse was exactly what I'd expected, all marble and intimidation tactics. Elias arrived with his lawyer, Clara, looking confident in an expensive suit. He even smiled and nodded at me like we were old friends instead of opposing parties in a lawsuit. Ready to get this over with? He asked, settling into his chair at the Plainty FFS table. I think we can reach a reasonable settlement that works for everyone. I just smiled back and checked my phone. 9:30 a.m. The tow truck had picked up his car exactly on schedule last night. By now, it was sitting in the auction house, being prepped for sale. The judge called the session to order promptly at 10 a.m. Clara began her opening statement, painting me as an emotionally unstable ex-girlfriend who'd threatened to destroy Elias's business reputation out of spite. Elias sat back confidently, occasionally nodding or looking disappointed at the evidence of my supposed misconduct. He was performing for the judge, playing the role of the Longsu FF erring entrepreneur just trying to build something great. At 10:05, I saw his phone buzz on the table. He glanced at it, then did a double take. His confident expression faltered for just a moment. The auction had begun. The first notification was simple: auction item 247 to 1967 Shelby Mustang GT 500 bidding has begun. Current bid, $1. I watched Elias's face as he read the message. Confusion, then realization. Then something close to panic. He whispered urgently to Clara, who was still presenting evidence to the judge. She shushed him without looking away from her notes. "Mr. Chen, please let me finish." His phone buzzed again. Current bid, $1. No additional bidders registered. I'd arranged that part carefully. Marcus had quietly let his regular bidders know this particular auction might be complicated and suggested they might want to skip this lot. The one bidder who showed up was someone I'd never met, a representative from a local charity who'd been told about a potential vehicle donation. Elias tried to stand up, but Clara grabbed his arm and pulled him back down. The judge was watching now, clearly annoyed by the disruption. "Is there a problem, Mr. Chen?" the judge asked. "Your Honor, I need to make an urgent phone call." "There's been a court is in session," the judge said firmly. "You'll have plenty of time for phone calls during our break." The next notification came 30 seconds later. Bidding closed. Final bid, $1. Sale confirmed. Elias went completely white. I watched his pupils contract as the full reality hit him. His car, his beautiful, meticulously maintained, $200,000 car, had just been sold for $1 while he sat helpless in a courtroom. "No," he whispered, staring at his phone. "No, no, no." Clara was still presenting her case, completely unaware that her client was having a breakdown beside her. The judge was taking notes, occasionally glancing at Elias with growing concern. Another notification: vehicle transfer complete. New owner, Hope Springs Youth Charity. Congratulations on your sale. That's when he snapped. "Stop," he shouted, jumping up from his chair. "I need to call them. They can't do this." The entire courtroom went silent. The judge looked stunned. Clara looked mortified. "Mr. Chen," the judge said slowly, "please sit down." "They stole my car," he continued, waving his phone in the air. "She stole my car and sold it for $1. Your Honor, this is theft." I stood up calmly. "Your Honor, if I may clarify, the vehicle in question was jointly owned. I exercised my legal right to sell my share of the property." Elias spun around to face me, his face twisted with rage. "You vindictive bitch. That car was mine, Mr. Chen." The judge barked. "Control yourself or I'll hold you in contempt." But Elias was beyond control now. "She planned this," he screamed, pointing at me with a shaking finger. "She knew I'd be stuck in here. She waited until I couldn't stop her." The judge's expression had gone from annoyed to appalled. Clara was frantically trying to get her client to sit down, but Elias shook her off. "Do you know what that car was worth? Do you know how long it took me to restore it? She sold it out of spite. Pure spite." I remained perfectly calm, which only seemed to make him angrier. "Your Honor, everything I did was completely legal. As Mr. Chen's lawsuit itself demonstrates, we are no longer in a relationship. I simply chose to liquidate my share of our jointly owned assets. For $1, he shouted. $1. It was worth $200,000. I have every right to choose my own selling price, I replied calmly. Market value is subjective. The judge was writing furiously now, clearly documenting every word of Elias's meltdown. This was going better than I'd ever hoped. "You did this to hurt me," he continued. "This whole lawsuit, You're trying to destroy me because you can't handle that I'm more successful than you. Clara was pulling on his arm now, whispering urgently for him to stop talking. But he was too far gone to listen. I built that company. I made the connections. I found the investors. I did everything. And you think you can just, Mr. Chen, the judge interrupted, sit down. Now. The judge's voice cut through Elias's rage like a knife. Mr. Chen, your behavior in my courtroom is completely unacceptable. Your emotional outburst, your language, and your apparent inability to control yourself are noted for the record. Elias finally seemed to realize where he was and what he'd done. He sat down heavily, his face flushed and his hands still shaking. Furthermore, the judge continued, your own testimony has raised serious questions about your credibility and emotional stability, the very qualities you've accused the defendant of lacking. Clara looked like she wanted to disappear. She'd spent weeks building a case around my supposed emotional instability, and her client had just demonstrated actual emotional instability in front of a judge. Based on what I've witnessed today, I'm dismissing this case entirely, the judge announced. Mr. Chen, your claims of emotional damages are undermined by your own conduct. Your allegations of defamation are unsupported by evidence. This lawsuit appears to be frivolous and potentially motivated by personal animus. Elias stared at the judge in shock. You can't do that. She stole my car. Mr. Chen, one more outburst and I'll hold you in contempt. The defendant has clearly demonstrated that the vehicle sale was legal. Your reaction to it only reinforces my decision to dismiss your case. The gavel came down with a sharp crack that echoed through the silent courtroom. Case dismissed with prejudice. Court is adjourned. It was over. I had won completely. Outside the courthouse, news crews were already gathering. Word of the dramatic courtroom meltdown was spreading fast, especially when someone leaked that it involved a $200,000 car being sold for $1 during the hearing. I walked past the cameras without comment, but I could see Elias behind me, still trying to explain to anyone who would listen that he'd been the victim of theft. The charity representative was waiting by my car with a huge smile and an OFI-style receipt. Ms. Chen, or should I say, our most generous benefactor, we can't thank you enough. This donation will make such a difference for our kids. It was my pleasure, I said, meaning every word. I hope they enjoy it. She handed me the keys, the same keys Elias had obsessively polished along with the car every weekend. Would you like to say a few words? We're planning a little ceremony for the donation. Actually, I have a better idea, I said, pulling out my phone. Would you mind taking a photo of the car with some of the kids from your program? I know someone who'd love to see how much joy it brings them. 20 minutes later, I had the perfect shot. A dozen laughing kids surrounding the pristine blue Mustang, their hands all over the paint job Elias had spent hours perfecting. They were climbing on the hood, sitting in the driver's seat, having the time of their lives. It was exactly what that car needed. Not to sit in a garage being polished, but to bring joy to people who would actually appreciate it. I had the photo printed and professionally mounted, then packaged it carefully with a handwritten note. Elias, thank you for teaching me so much about business strategy, market timing, and the importance of reading the fine print on legal documents. I thought you'd like to see how much joy your car is bringing to the kids at Hope Springs Youth Charity. As you can see, they're taking excellent care of it. Consider this emotional closure. Best regards, your former co-founder. I mailed it to his apartment with signature confirmation required. I wanted to be absolutely certain he received it personally. The next week was a blur of vindication. Tech blogs picked up the story of the lawsuit dismissal and the dramatic courtroom meltdown. Someone leaked video of Elias screaming about his car, and it went viral with captions like "When keeping it real goes wrong" and "Startup bro loses his cool and his car." Meanwhile, my own AI project was getting serious interest from investors who'd heard about my technical skills through the industry gossip network. Apparently, single-handedly building a superior platform while fighting a frivolous lawsuit was impressive to people who actually understood technology. The irony was perfect. While Elias was dealing with negative publicity and investor flight, I was fielding calls from VCs who wanted to fund my next venture. 6 months later, Elias's startup was officially defunct. Without my technical foundation and with his reputation in ruins, investors pulled funding and clients cancelled contracts. The company that was supposed to make him rich had bankrupted him instead. I heard through Mara that he'd tried to sue the charity to get his car back, but no lawyer would take the case. The donation was completely legal, and his public meltdown had made him look petty and vindictive. Meanwhile, my new AI company had just closed a $2.3 million Series A round. The same investors who'd once questioned my emotional stability were now calling me a visionary. My platform was being used by Fortune 500 companies, and tech magazines were writing profiles about my comeback story. But the real victory wasn't financial. It was the silence. Elias had stopped trying to contact me, stopped posting about his failed company, stopped showing up at industry events where people might ask uncomfortable questions. He'd learned, finally, that some people are more dangerous when they're quiet. I kept the receipt from the car sale framed on my OFI wall, not as a trophy, but as a reminder. A reminder that patience, precision, and perfect timing could accomplish more than any amount of shouting or legal threats. The receipt showed the sale price clearly, $1. The most expensive dollar he'd ever cost himself.